My father kicked me out of family dinner because I refused to buy my sister a car. I walked into my parents' house, and the first thing that hit me was a smell of barbecued ribs, baked mac and cheese, and a faint but unmistakable scent of Dad's fancy cologne, the same one he's worn. Since the 90s, Mom always went all out for family dinners, and tonight was no exception. The dining table was loaded with classic American comfort food: cornbread, mashed potatoes, grilled steaks, and enough beer and whiskey to keep Dad what he called his Sunday best mood. I wished I could say I was excited to be there, but I already knew how the night was going to go. It always did. My younger sister Lauren was a golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the independent one, which was just a nice way of saying I didn't get handouts. Grabbed a plate and was about to dive into the mac and cheese when Dad, already 2 drinks in, cleared his throat. Lauren's been doing great in college, he announced like he was giving a TED Talk. Top of her class, professors say she's got a bright future ahead. I took a sip of my beer and nodded, keeping my mouth shut. No need to poke the bear, Mom beamed. She's been working so hard, Frank. She deserves all the success. Good for her. Honestly, but I already knew where this was going. It was the way they acted like Lauren was a second coming, while I was just some extra piece of furniture that got under my skin. I bet it's tough balancing school and work, huh, sweetheart? Dad said, his voice thick with fake sympathy. That's why I was thinking. He turned to me, and I knew it was game time. Ethan, don't you think it's time you helped out your sister a little there? It was the setup. I glanced at Lauren, who was pretending to be surprised, but come on, she already had this conversation with them. How do you mean? I asked like I didn't already know. Dad leaned back, swirling his whiskey. She's been struggling to get to work and class. You got a good job now. Maybe you could buy her a car. I almost choked on my drink. Thought they were going to ask me to help with rent or pitch in for groceries, not buy her a whole car. Lauren gave an Oscar-worthy performance of humility. I mean, I wasn't going to ask, but it would make things so much easier. Just something simple like a used Civic. I put down my fork. You want me to buy her a car? Mom jumped in before I could even react. It's not that much to ask, sweetheart. You're doing so well in your job. It wouldn't even make a dent in your finances. Oh, sure, because my paycheck was just Monopoly money. I shook my head. I'm not buying her a car. Silence. Dad's face twitched, and I could see the explosion coming from a mile away. Are you serious? I stayed calm. Yeah, I'm serious. I work my way through college without anyone buying me a car. If Lauren wants one, she can do it. I did save up. Dad slammed his glass down so hard I thought it would shatter. Unbelievable. Lauren sighed dramatically. I knew this would happen. I pushed my plate away. Knew what happened, that I wouldn't let you take advantage of me. Mom put a hand on Dad's arm, trying to de-escalate, but he was already too far gone. You know what, Ethan? I don't know where we went wrong with you. His voice was sharp, full of disappointment. You become selfish. You only think about yourself. I let out a sigh, dry laugh that was rich coming from him. Dad pointed at the door. If you're going to act like this, you can leave. I looked at my mom, hoping she'd step in, but she just sat there, lips pressed together, avoiding my eyes. Lauren crossed her arms, looking satisfied, like she just won some silent battle. I stood up, grabbed my jacket. All right then, no one stopped me. As I walked out, the night air was cold, but it felt better than being in that house. I wasn't even surprised. This was how it always went. I just didn't expect him to stoop this low. I got in my car, gripping the steering wheel as I processed everything. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. I wasn't going to be their ATM, not anymore. I woke up the next morning, still feeling the weight of last night's disaster. My dad's words echoed in my head. Selfish, ungrateful, only thinking about myself. I sat up in bed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, but the frustration was still there. I dragged myself to the kitchen, started a pot of coffee, and checked my phone. A couple notifications from work, some emails, nothing urgent, but then my eyes landed on something I hadn't thought about in years: the shared account with Lauren back in college, when I was still dumb enough to believe that family should always help each other. I had set up that account to give her a little financial cushion if she ever needed gas money or emergency cash. I had almost forgotten about it. Something told me to check it. I opened my banking app, scrolled to the account, and my stomach tightened. This was an emergency fund. This was a full-blown lifestyle sponsorship. Rows and rows of charges. $785 Starbucks, $22.50 Ulta, $19.99 Sephora more, Starbucks more, online shopping, Apple Music, a recurring charge for Netflix. My jaw clenched as I scroll further. Hundreds blown on delivery apps, Grubhub, Uber Eats, Door Dash. Lauren had been living like a VIP while I assumed she was struggling to get by. Then I saw it a $600 charge from some boutique in Lai. I let out a short laugh, one of those try humorous ones. Barely getting by, huh? I didn't even hesitate. I went straight to the settings, removed my name from the account, and transferred every last cent into my personal savings. A few seconds later, my phone started buzzing Lauren. I stare at the screen debating decline the first, call buzz decline the second buzz third. Time to charm, I sighed, and finally answered what the hell. Ethan, her voice was high-pitched somewhere between outrage and panic. I just tried to buy something and the car got declined. I pour myself a cup of coffee, keeping my voice even. Yeah, I close it, count. Silence. Then she practically screeched, "You can't do that." Oh, I can, and I did. I could hear the dramatic inhale. The kind of huff people do when they're used to getting their way and suddenly don't. You didn't even tell me I have bills. What am I supposed to do? Get a job that covers your lifestyle? I said flatly. You're joking. Dead serious. She let out a noise that was half laugh, half disbelief. Oh my God, you're actually insane. I took a sip of my coffee, Lauren. I've been paying for your nonsense for years. Starbucks makeup. Netflix, I don't know you. Any of that? Her voice went from pissed to pleading. It's not like that. I just, this month has been hard, and I cut her off, Lauren. I went through years of hard months, and you know how I dealt with it. I budgeted silence, then she sighed. Mom and Dad are going to lose it. That made me pause for half a second, but then I shook it off. Yeah, let them. Maybe they can buy you that car they wanted me to. Get another sharp inhale. Then the call. Disconnected. I sat back in my chair, gripping my coffee mug. The adrenaline was wearing off, but the frustration was still there. I wasn't a bad guy. I wasn't the selfish one, if they want to call me that. Fine, I was done being their personal bank. Not anymore. The knock on my door came earlier than expected. I had just finished my second cup of coffee, still in sweatpants, scrolling through my phone, trying to shake off the leftover irritation from yesterday. The moment I heard the knock, I already knew who it was. I took a slow breath before opening the door. And there he was, Frank, my father dressed in his usual weekend outfit, jeans of flannel, and that belt he always tightened just a little too much, like it was part of intimidation tactics. He didn't waste time. We need to talk of course we did. I stepped aside and let him in, mostly because I didn't feel like head of my neighbors witnessed a family soap opera that was about to unfold. He walked straight to my kitchen like he owned the place, grabbed a coffee pot, poured himself a cup without asking, and sat down at the table like this was just another Sunday morning chat. I stayed standing. Lauren told me what you did. Then leaned against the counter, arms crossed, waiting for the speech. I knew exactly how this was going to go. First, the disappointment, then the guilt trip, and if that didn't work, the threats. You really think this is how you treat family, cutting off your own sister? You know she's struggling. I had the receipts to prove otherwise. Literally, I stayed silent, just watching him. He hated that he wanted me to snap, to get defensive, to play into his game. I don't know what went wrong with you. There. It was she's a college student, Ethan. She's supposed to be focusing on her education, not worrying about money. I sighed, rubbing my temple. Then why did she spend $600 at a in LA or hundreds on Starbucks or UATs? Or his expression shifted, but just for a second. Then he leaned forward, his voice dropping into that condescending fatherly tone. This isn't about her spending. This is about you acting like you're too good to help your family. And there it was, the guilt trip. You got a good job, Ethan. You live comfortably, and yet you can't even spare a little to make sure your sister has a roof over her head. I raise an eyebrow. Pretty sure she already has a roof over her head, unless you're saying she's below her rent money too. He exhaled sharply, through his nose, gripping his coffee mug. You're not getting it. Family looks out for each other. We don't abandon each other over a few bucks. I nearly laughed. So here's what's going to happen. He continued, sitting back like this was some kind of business negotiation. You're going to transfer the money back, or at least cover her rent for next month. That's all I'm asking. Asking, right? I tapped my fingers against the counter, pretending to think about it. Didn't you say you'd cover her expenses? If she needed help, something about family looking out for each other. His jaw tightened. That was before I knew you'd turn your back on us. I let out a short, humorless chuckle. So when you offer help, it's family loyalty. But when I don't, I'm the selfish one, the must-in. His jaw twitched. He set his coffee down with just a little too much force. You're making a mistake, Ethan. I shrug, maybe. But at least it's my mistake to make. He stood adjusting his belt like he always did when he was holding back anger. You think you're so independent now, but life is a funny way of humbling people. One day you're going to need us, and when that day comes, don't expect us to be there. I watched as he made his way to the door. He stopped for a second, hand on the knob, then turned back, his face unreadable. I'll fix this myself. I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair as the door slammed shut. Yeah, this wasn't over. I poured myself another cup of coffee, staring at the empty spot where he had sat if he thought he could guilt me into rolling over. He was in for surprise. A few days later, I was scrolling through Craigslist distracted while finishing my morning coffee. I wasn't looking for anything in particular, just killing time before getting ready for work when something made me do a double take. A familiar looking car, my car. I blinked, thinking I had to be mistaken, but no, there it was, right on the screen, my old '08 Mustang. The one I had worked my butt off to BU as a teenager, listed under some generic post titled "Great First Car, Well Maintained." I clicked the listing, my heart pounding. The pictures confirmed it. The slight dent near the rear bumper, the custom leather seat covers I had put in myself, that was my damn car, and the seller, Frank, my father. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. He didn't even have the decency to mention it to me, just decided that since I wasn't bowing to his demands, he'd start selling off my stuff. I grabbed my keys and was out the door in under 5 minutes. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual, maybe because I was running through every possible way this confrontation could go, but I already knew how it would, and I wasn't leaving without my car. Pulled up the driveway, spotting it. Instantly there she was, parked out front, like a prop in someone else's garage. The sight of it made something tighten in my chest. I didn't even bother knocking. I walked straight into the house where my dad was sitting in the living room, TV remote in hand, like he didn't have a care in the world. Nice listing on Craigslist, I said, my voice even controlled. He barely looked up. You weren't using it, figured someone else. Could I let out a short laugh, more out of disbelief and humor? You figured without asking me. That car is mine, Dad. Him? Paid for it. He set the remote down, finally giving me his full attention. It's been sitting in the driveway for months, Ethan. You clearly don't need it. I stared at him, half expecting some sign of guilt. There was none, just that same old I know best look he had mastered over the years. Yeah, well, I need it now. I grabbed the spare keys from a hook by the door, the same place they'd always been before he could say another word. I was out the door and behind the wheel. The engine roared to life, just like it always did. I couldn't help but smile. Even through my frustration, I didn't waste time. I reversed out of the driveway and took off down the street before my dad even made out the front door. It wasn't until I hit the main road that my phone started buzzing. Dad. I ignored the first call, then the second. By the third, I figured I might as well see what kind of nonsense he was about to spew. I answered. You stole that car. I almost laughed. Stole? I took back my own property. That car was in my driveway under my roof. That makes it mine. That's not how ownership works. Dad, his voice was rising. That deep, authoritative tone he always used when he thought he could bull-do me into submission. You can't just take it. Ethan, I was selling it. I already had people interested. I sighed, shaking my head. Yeah, well, now they'll have to be interested in something else. There was a long pause, then in a lower, more threatening voice, he said, this isn't over. I hung up. Of course it wasn't over. I took the next turn toward my apartment, my fingers tightening around the wheel. The Mustang was mine again, but something told me that this was just a beginning of whatever game my father thought he was playing. I pulled into my complex's parking lot and just sat there for a moment, letting my hands rest on the wheel. The familiar scent of old leather and faint traces of the air freshener I used to keep in here fill my nose. This wasn't just a car. This was years of my lifelong shifts at a crappy job, late nights fixing it up, saving every dollar to afford it, and my dad thought he could just list it online like some junk he didn't need anymore. I laughed under my breath, but it wasn't a happy one. If he wanted to fight, he was about to get one. A couple of days passed, and I was finally starting to cool down from the whole stolen Mustang fiasco. I told myself I'd let it go, move on. No more family drama, no more ridiculous stunts. Then I walked into my apartment and felt my stomach drop. The place wasn't trashed. No broken windows, no kicked-in door, but the second I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. My gaming console? Gone. My laptop? Gone. My watches, including the one my grandfather had given me, gone. I stood in the middle of my living room, trying to make sense of it. Nothing else had been touched. My TV was still on the stand. The cheap jewelry I never wore was right where I left it. The kitchen was untouched. This wasn't some random break-in. This was personal. I checked the lock. No signs of forced entry. The door had been opened with the key. My fingers tightened around my phone as I scrolled to the one number I really didn't want to call. Frank. I hit dial. He picked up after the second ring, his voice cool, like he'd been expecting my call. Finally. Notice, huh? I felt my pulse spike. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Where's my stuff? He let out a short, humorless chuckle. I sold it. I nearly dropped the phone. You did what you don't want to. Help family fine, then you don't need all that extra stuff. Someone else can make better use of it. I gripped the back of the couch, trying to ground myself. You came into my apartment and took my things because I wouldn't pay for Lauren's rent. He didn't even flinch. It wasn't taking. Ethan, you're my son. Everything you have, we help you get one way or another. Don't act like you did it all on your own. My vision blurred with frustration. I forced myself to take a breath to keep my voice level. So that's it. You just decide you can take whatever you want, not whatever I want, he said. Like he was being reasonable, just what you don't need, you weren't using half of it anyway. I felt a sharp, bitter laugh rise in my throat. So you're running a pawn shop now? He ignored the sarcasm. You're overreacting. It's just stuff. If you want something back, you can buy it. Again, maybe with the money you should have used to help your sister. That was it. That was the final straw, I exhaled. Slowly, my hand shaking as I forced myself to stay calm. I'm done, he didn't even hesitate. Yeah, with you. With this you want to take from me, fine. But don't expect me to come running when you need something. Silence, then a scoff. You'll come back around, you always do. I ended the call. My whole body was tense, my hands gripping the phone so hard I thought it might crack. I wasn't sure what I was going to do next, but one thing was clear this time: I wasn't going to let it slide. I sat down, staring at the empty spot where my gaming console used to be. My laptop had all my work files. My watches weren't just accessories, they had meaning, and this wasn't just some family issue anymore. This was theft, a real legal crime, and if my father thought I'd just roll over, like I always had, he was about to get the biggest wake-up call of his life. Then I sat on my couch staring at the blank space where my gaming console used to be. My laptop was gone. My watches, some of them family heirlooms, vanished. The anger that had been simmering finally boiled over into something clearer. This wasn't just another round of family drama. This was theft, and theft had consequences. I grabbed my phone and did what I should have done the second I saw my stuff was missing. I called a lawyer. After a few minutes of explaining my situation, the guy on the other end let out a low whistle. Wow, that's a new one, he said, clearly entertained. Most people don't have to deal with their own parents. Pulling this stunt, I wasn't in the mood for jokes. Can I do anything about it? Legally, he didn't hesitate. Absolutely. You have text-to-call log and the fact that there was no forced entry. If your father took your belongings without consent, that's theft, plain and simple. Exhaled, I knew it, but hearing it from someone who actually understood the maid a hit differently. He continued, if you file a police report, they'll have no choice but to investigate whether or not it goes to court. Well, that depends. But if your dad want to play this game, he's in for a reality check. That was all I needed to hear. I thanked him, hung up, and immediately called the police. Non-emergency line. The conversation was surprisingly smooth. The officer took down the information and advised me to stop communicating with my father for the time being. That part made me pause my entire life. I had been taught that family issue, stay in the family no matter how bad things got you, didn't involve outsiders. But this was different. He didn't just take a couple of bucks from my wallet. He had broken into my home and sold my property like it was his to do whatever he wanted with. I got off the phone, the weight in my chest a little lighter. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I called my father. It rang twice before he picked up. Ethan, his tone was flat, like he was bracing for a fight. I didn't waste time. I filed a police report. Silence, then a scoff. You didn't? I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. You're really going to drag our family through this over a couple of gadgets? I clenched my jaw over my property being stolen and sold without my consent. Yeah, I am. There was a pause, and for first time in a long time, I thought I heard something new in his voice. Panic. Listen, son, he said, suddenly switching to that sickly sweet, let's be reasonable voice. There's no need to get the police involved. Let's talk this out like adults. I leaned back, shaking my head even though he couldn't see me. That option was on the table. Before you decided to sell my things. Behind my back, he let out a heavy breath. Fine, what do you want? I almost laughed. He didn't even deny it, didn't try to gaslight me, twist the story, make me feel like I was overreacting. He knew exactly what he had done, and now that there were real consequences, he was scrambling. Want my money, every dollar you made from selling my stuff now? Another long pause, then the magic words, fine, I'll send it. Checked my phone a few minutes later, and sure enough, a transfer notification popped up. Every cent I half expected him to try and short me, but I guess the threat of actual legal action was enough to scare him straight. The weight in my chest finally lifted. I had won this round, but I wasn't naive. This wasn't over. I got up, walked to the kitchen, and poured myself a drink. The Mustang, the stolen electronics, the years of guilt. Tripping, it was all coming to a head. My father was losing control over me, and he hated it, and something told me he wasn't done trying to get it back. For the first time in my life, I was making decisions purely for myself. No guilt, no second guessing, just me, my own path, and a fresh start somewhere far from the mess I had left behind. A week later, I packed up my apartment, put in my 2 weeks at work, and started looking at places out of state. Texas, too hot. New York, too expensive. Eventually, I landed on Colorado. Good job market, decent rent, and most importantly, far enough away that no one could just drop by. I didn't tell anyone, no warning, no goodbyes. The only clue they got was when I canceled my lease, shut down my old phone number, and disappeared for the first time. I felt like I could breathe months past my new life was quiet, peaceful. I had a new job, a new apartment, and no surprise visits, no passive-aggressive texts, no constant guilt trips about how I wasn't doing enough for the family. Then out of nowhere, a knock on my door. I hesitated. Before opening it, no one here knew me well enough to drop by unannounced. My address wasn't listed anywhere obvious. Pulled the door open, and there she was. My mother, looking smaller than I remembered, the confident, always in control woman I grew up and was gone. Replaced by someone who looked drained. I didn't invite her in. She took a shaky breath. "Ethan, please, we need to talk." That same old part of me, the part that spent years trying to please him, to be the good son, wanted to listen, but I had learned my lesson. "How did you find me?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She hesitated, then sighed. "Lauren, she hired someone, a private investigator." I blinked. She did what Mom pressed her lips. Together, she was desperate. "She's pregnant, Ethan, and your father, he lost everything, the business, the house, it's all gone." I didn't react. I just stood there processing. She must have mistaken my silence for hesitation, because she reached out, gripping my arm. "We need you. Ethan, please come home." I stepped back out of reach. "You mean you need my money?" Her face crumpled. "It's not like that, but we both knew it was." I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. "I spent years being the family's financial safety net, years bending over backward to be what you all needed me to be. And when I finally stood up for myself, you stood by and let Dad sell my things." She flinched. "That was your father, not me." I met her eyes. "And you let it happen." Silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. Finally, she sighed, rubbing her temple like she was the one exhausted by all of this. "I know we made mistakes," she admitted, "but Lauren, she's scared. She's about to be a mother, and she has no one. Your father, he's not the same man anymore. He's broken." I didn't doubt that losing power over everyone around him probably felt like the end of the world, but that wasn't my problem anymore. I crossed my arms. "That's not my responsibility." Her lip trembled. "Ethan, we're still your face family." I let out a short laugh. "Funny, I don't remember feeling like family when you let Dad throw me out of that dinner, or when he tried to sell my car, or when he broke into my apartment." She had no response to that. I sighed, rubbing a hand down my face. "I'm not coming back, Mom. Not now, not ever." She wiped at her eyes, nodding stiffly. I had to try, and with that she turned and walked away, disappearing down the hallway. I closed the door, leaning against it as I let out a slow breath. It was really over, and for the first time I didn't feel guilty about it. The silence was refreshing. Months had passed since I last heard from my family. No guilt-tripping phone calls, no backhanded comments disguised as concern, no last-minute emergencies that conveniently require my financial assistance. For the first time, my life was just that. Mine. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting it to be a work email or maybe a message from a friend. Instead, it was "Lauren, Ethan, I really need to talk, please. It's important." I locked my phone and tossed it onto the counter. A year ago, I would have dropped everything, called her back instantly, let her tell me how hard things were and how just this one time she needed help, and then, just like always, I'd have been the one to fix everything while she reaped the benefits. But that was then. I had learned my lesson. The messages kept coming over the next few days, each more desperate than the last. "I don't have anywhere else to turn. You're my big brother. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" I don't know what I'm going to do. I knew what she was trying to do, pulled the same strings she always had. The problem was those strings have been cut, and yet some part of me hesitated, because as much as I had worked to break free, there was still a small part of me that wanted to believe she had changed, that this wasn't just another attempt to manipulate me. So I did something I hadn't done in months. Checked her social media, and there it was, between the vague inspirational quotes about family being forever and forgiveness setting you free, there were photos of her at restaurants, her buying baby clothes that look more designer than practical, a brand new stroller that probably cost more than my first car, and in the comments, a conversation where she told her friends that her brother was too selfish to help his own family. That was all the confirmation I needed. I blocked her number. I could already imagine how the story would be told at family gatherings, if there even were any. Left Ethan, abandoned his pregnant sister. Ethan turned his back on his family. Ethan only cares about himself, but none of them had been there the night I had laid awake wondering if I'd ever be more than just a family ATM. None of them had watched me struggle while pretending I was doing fine, because asking for help would only lead to lectures about how they had a harder. None of them had cared about me beyond what I could provide, and now, for the first time in my life, I was truly free. 6 months passed. I built a life in Colorado that had nothing to do with them. I had new friends who knew me for me, not for what I could do for them. I spent weekends hiking, visiting new places, actually living my life instead of waiting for the next disaster to clean up. I picked up new hobbies. cooking, which I had never really had time for, before I discovered that I actually enjoyed it not just microwaving, something fast between long shifts, but real cooking. I found a great little farmer's market down the road in Sunday. Mornings became my time to pick up fresh ingredients, chat with vendors, try new things. It was the kind of small pleasure I had never given myself permission to enjoy before I started going to gym. Again, not to impress anyone, but because it felt good to take care of myself. I wasn't constantly drained by someone else's problems, so I actually had energy to invest in my own health. Even dating felt different before I had been so preoccupied with family drama that I never had the mental space to connect with anyone. Now I was finally in a place where I could focus on myself and, to my surprise, people like me for who I was, not what I could provide. For the first time, I wasn't someone's backup plan, wasn't someone's safety net. I was just me, and it felt incredible. I'd be lying if I said I never thought about them. Every now and then, something would remind me of home. A song, a smell, a stupid joke only my dad would have laughed at, and for a moment I'd wonder if I had made the right choice. Then I'd remember what it felt like to be free, and I'd realize I had